Hello and welcome to the O Canada, Our Home and INVENTIVE Land podcast, based on some of the over 300 stories in my best-selling book of the same name.
Jack Cartilage and the Guelph Elastic Hosiery Company invented the hard cup jockstrap in 1927. Let's take a look at how this was done. While the original jockey strap was an invention by C.F. Bennett of the Chicago-based Sharp and Smith Sporting Goods Company in 1874, it was then meant as a comfortable support for bicycle-riding messenger boys or bike jockeys. How much comfort this provided to the bike jockeys on those early cobblestone streets of Boston, or the other cobbled street towns, is anyone's guess. This bike jockey application led to its name, the jockey strap, or later shortened to the jock strap. And incidentally, that's the current vernacular of jock for the hip hotshot athlete. It stems from this short form. By the time the garment was in widespread use by many athletes in the 1920s, many professional sports were well underway, and any men playing these sports knew the susceptibility of certain body parts to be easily discombobulated by the slightest jarring during rough play. Contrary to popular Canadian lore, there was no French-Canadian hockey player named Jacques Lestrade. The invention of the goalie mask, however, Plante was not the first goalie to invent and wear the mask in hockey. That distinction belongs to Clint Benedict, who was born on September 26, 1892 and died November 12, 1976. He was also a Canadian hockey player from Ottawa. Benedict was also ironically a goaltender for the Montreal team, just like Plante, but played for the Montreal Maroons from 1924 to 1930. On January 7th of 1930, he was hit in the face by a shot and broke his nose. He missed 6 weeks of action, but returned on February 20th of 1930 and wore a leather face mask against the New York Americans. He tried different or modified versions over the next 5 games, but was again injured in a game against the Ottawa Senators on March 4th, 1930, in a scramble in the goal crease. Benedict felt that the mask obscured his vision. He said it was leather with a big nose piece, and the nose piece proved to be the problem because it obscured my vision. That would prove to be his last game in the NHL. Flash forward 30 years later to Jacques Plante's infamous game on November 1st of 1959, where he was playing goal for the Montreal Canadiens, and Andy Bathgate broke his nose with a slap shot. Plante went to the dressing room for stitches, and when he returned, he was wearing a crude homemade fiberglass mask that he had been using in practices. His coach, the legendary and short-tempered Toe Blake, had never permitted him to wear it in a game, as he felt it would hamper his vision in play. When Blake saw him emerge from the dressing room to take the ice with the mask on, he was furious. Plante stood his ground and refused to play without it. With no other goalie sitting on the bench as Blake looked down, pondering what to do, he had no choice, but insisted it only be used till the cut had healed. The Canadiens ended up winning that game 3-1. Plante and the Canadiens went unbeaten for the next 17 games. Blake requested that Plante now discard the mask, which he did against Detroit on March 8, 1960, where they lost 3-0 to face with the goalie masks, or protecting their head with helmets, with these 3 better late than never Canadian inventions.
Hello, Canada and hockey fans in the United States and Newfoundland. The first period is over and there's no score.
Well, here we are at the Foster Hewitt Gondola, and I thought it appropriate to use Foster's famous intro to Hockey Night in Canada to start our final segment of this podcast on the invention of the game of hockey itself. Let's take you back in time. Back in the early 1800s, at King's College, Nova Scotia, with a helping hand from James Crichton, the game of hockey was invented right here in Canada. Let's take you back to that time and see if we can learn a little more about the greatest game ever played. Hockey's invention was more of an evolution of some other games played in various areas of the world, and was derived really from field hockey, which was played with curved sticks. The name is a bit of a mystery, or is in dispute as to its exact origin. The French word hoquet, which actually means shepherd's crook, and forgive my French pronunciation, my good French friends, that word or that name seems to play a role. Shinty The origin of the word shinty, or hurley, which is an ancient Gaelic or Irish form of shinty, or field hockey, is another possible contributor. But hockey historians regularly agree the closest form of the game, which is of course Canada's official winter sport. If you want to hear the rest of this exciting episode, go to your favorite podcast app like Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Castbox, Podbean, or anywhere you get your podcasts. At the O Canada, our Home and INVENTIVE Land podcast by Professor Mark Rector, you'll hear some of the more than 300 stories from my best-selling book of the same name in a fun and engaging theater of the mind style. There's already 10 new episodes out, including the origins of the game of hockey and the invention of some of its equipment like the goalie mask, the invention of the light bulb, yes, it was Canadian, by Matthew Evans, not Thomas Edison, and the story of one of the most accomplished and determined women in Canadian history, Dr. Elizabeth Elsie McGill. She was the very first female aeronautical engineer, as well as the story of Banting and his invention of insulin, the story of the top-secret spy training school, Camp X, and the Canadian invention of gasoline, and many, many more. So quick, go search for my name on your favorite podcast app, Professor Mark Rector, and listen to the O Canada, our Home and INVENTIVE Land podcast, with many engaging episodes and many more to come. I'll also put the link below in the comments to some of the more popular podcast applications. Don't forget, friends, I'm Professor Mark Rector, and I am Canadian.